Okay, bore da, chroeso, good morning and welcome to this multi-location meeting of the Environment, Regeneration and Streetscene Services Scrutiny Committee on the 8th of November 2024. I'm Councillor Sean Percy, I'll be chairing the meeting this morning. As usual, please make sure your phones are on silent during the meeting, and for members in the chamber and on Teams, please keep your mics on mute unless you're speaking, and raise your hands and I'll call you to speak. For the purposes of declarations today, I just want to confirm we're scrutinising items 3A, 3B and 3C from the Cabinet Forward Work Programme. I'll move now to agenda item 2, which is declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations from members? See, Councillor Gareth Rice. Gareth?
Yeah, just I'm trustee of Friends of Jersey Park.
Thank you, Gareth. Dem Services will just forward a form to you to fill out in relation to that interest. Thank you. Are there any other declarations from members? I can't see any. Okay, so we'll now move on to part 1 of the meeting, item 3, to consider items we've selected from the Cabinet Forward Work Programme. So we'll move first to item 3A, which is the disposal of off-street pay and display car parks, capacity and utilisation review on pages 5 to 27. So before I go to questions from members, officers, do you have anything to add to the report? Do you want to do an introduction?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just for members' information, this is obviously an early high-level review of the car parking capacity. It's come about as a result of a number of inquiries and items that the Council are trying to deal with strategically. But most importantly, Signal Capital made an approach to the authority about the Talbot multi-storey car park. In that respect, it's a report about cost avoidance there, as the building or the car park is getting very tired and needs significant capital investment, circa at least £2.5 million in the short to medium term to be spent on it. The other car parks in the report were considered to support the LDP as potential housing development sites or for regeneration purposes, particularly in the Talbot town centre. So today, there's no decision needed to be taken on 3 out of the 4 items. They're basically asking members permission to enter into further discussions with Signal Capital and 2 of the car parks. We will retain at present, and should their opportunities come forward for future housing or regeneration purposes, they would be revisited at that time and detailed survey works undertaken. And the only decision we will be asking members and Cabinet to take is the potential disposal of the small Rosser Street car park in Neath along Princess Margaret Way, directly opposite the multi-storey car park. That would still be retained and operated as a car park until such time as a developer came forward for a potential housing development site to support my colleague Kerrig in planning with the delivery of the housing demand for the LDP. So thank you, Chair. It was just that high-level overview.
Okay, thank you for the introduction, Ed. That's very helpful for members. We did have a number of questions in pre-briefing. I'm just going to group them by each of the proposals and recommendations just to aid the discussion. We didn't have any indications on Rosser Street, but I just wanted to check with members today whether any members have any questions in relation to the Rosser Street car park proposal. Okay, I can't see any indications from members on that particular item. So the next proposal for us to discuss is the Milland Road car park, and there were some indications in pre-brief on that one. I'm just checking here. I'm going to start with Councillor Gareth Rice, which was in relation to, I think, the fair on Milland Road. And if I could just ask any other members to indicate to me in the chamber on Teams if they have any questions in relation to Milland Road. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just a question regarding the income that was on the form, whether it was considered of the amount paid by the fairs for Easter and September.
Thanks, Gareth.
Yeah, so if I may respond, Chair, just for background for members' information in case they don't know, the council don't actually own Milland Road car park. We lease the car park from an arch company where Network Rail disposed of car parking land many years ago. So we lease that car park from the Arch Co, and we pay quite a significant lease on that, to such an extent that the lease is almost costing us as much as the income that we take. And then when we put maintenance on top of that, that's resulting in a net loss to the parking operational account there. The other part of Milland Road car park is in the ownership of Network Rail, which is sublet to Transport for Wales as part of their rail portfolio. So the car park is split about half and half, although we actually at the moment occupy, without formal approval from Network Rail, their car park as well. And my estates colleagues are currently working through rationalising that lease. But turning to Councillor Rice's inquiry in terms of the income, the parking service don't receive any income. We just make the car park along with Network Rail available for the fair to take place. But I should add that there is no income that the authority receives. I've had the accountants confirm, and my property colleagues that manage the fair, that there's an actual cost to the authority, which we subsidise, of effectively last year £42,340. So that's a cost to the authority. It's not an income to support the Neath Grape Fair. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Gareth, did you have any supplementary questions on that?
No, that's fine. It's just surprising that it actually costs us. I thought we'd be making money from that rental, but okay, that's what it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Vice Chair Tim Bowen. Tim?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Dave, simple question. The Arch are looking to put the rent up possibility.
Yes.
Do we know how much that could go to?
So the lease at Milland Road is due to expire at the end of December. They have sort of given indicative figures which are double the cost of the current rental. So it could be as much as £100,000. So that would make it unviable. Well, we'd be subsidising that car park then as a council. Having said that, the lease will roll over, so it doesn't mean that it won't be available for parking come the first week in January. It will automatically roll over. So our estates colleagues will continue to enter into dialogue over that. And as I say, there's no decision to be made at the moment. It's asking for authority to enter into those firm discussions. If we can hold the figure over and they're prepared not to increase the cost, then that would ease the decision-making process. But if they force the issue and they want to put such an excessive increase to the lease, then we'll have to give some serious consideration to that. Having said that, the car park would still be available for car parking. It just might be run by the Arch Co, or Network Rail might purchase that back from that company and run it as a parking facility for rail.
Okay. Just one other question. Back in 22-23, we made a loss of nearly £20,000. Is that right?
Yeah, we'll take this one.
Yes, it is right. It's the maintenance issues, vandalism to the paint display machines, lighting failing. It's just that it is right. This
This is not a valuable car park to the council then.
it's not, and I think it's important to note that the top bit that we don't own, that's the bit where all the money is taken. That's where everybody parks. So even if we hold on to the bottom bit, we're not going to take any money. We'll have no income, but we'll have to pay the rent. And also, you know, Network Rail have sort of indicated there's nothing in solid that they probably want it to run it themselves, the top part.
I'm in favour of it going back to the owners, basically.
I was going to say something else, and it's just escaped. Oh yeah, my thought train now.
No worries. If it comes back to you, I just wanted to come in briefly on this one myself, and it is a bit of a strange one with the multiple owners and the responsibilities there. Obviously, you've indicated that Network Rail are interested in continuing operating as a car park. Does that refer to the whole site or just that smaller area near the railway station? It's just getting a sense really as part of this that if we were no longer going to lease that larger parcel of land, could it potentially be released for development? Do we need to consider an overall reduction in parking capacity for Neath as part of that proposal, perhaps?
So there's a requirement on Network Rail and Transport for Wales to have a sufficient parking capacity at Milland Road and nationally every car park. Their intention is to continue to run that as a car park. Archco, what they are fearful is that if the council withdraw from the lease arrangement with Archco, they're afraid that Archco will increase their costs or reduce their costs such that they're lower than Network Rail, and it would reverse the issue that Ian just described, and people will park cheaper in Archco's land than on Network Rail land. But of course, they've got a much longer, significantly longer walk to the railway station then to access rail. Now, part of the wider discussions there are linked with the transport hub, where we would also have to provide some additional car parking to them. But effectively, all of Milland Road would be retained as a car park. The Archco could potentially release their land for development, but Network Rail retain access rights over that land. Network Rail retain
Sorry, Councillor Ros Davis, you seem to be on, your mic seems to be live. Thank you.
Sorry. So lost my I'm having a bad morning. I've lost my thought trail again. Oh yes, sorry. So Network Rail have got retained access rights over the Archco land. But the other thing to bear in mind in terms of Milland Road, that in planning terms, it falls within the floodplain. So it'd be very restrictive as to what development could take place there. So it's highly unlikely really that would become developed in terms of a building.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. Okay, members, were there any other questions in relation to Milland Road or Neath Town Centre generally? Because I think this is the last one in relation to Neath at the moment. I can't see any indications at the moment. So we'll move on to discussing the Port Talbot multi-storey proposal now. And again, there were a few indications on this one. I'll start with Councillor Rob Wood in the chamber.
Thanks, Chair. This actual proposal, I think, is very short-sighted from officers with Neath Port Talbot County Borough Council. I mean, we've just had 15 million levelling up funding for the Civic Centre Theatre. Now, I would have thought something which is intrinsically linked to theatres these days is the parking ability to visit the theatre. And we are looking at entering negotiations with a private company that could see us lose control over that parking for the Civic Centre. At a recent seminar that we held here, one of my colleagues mentioned, could we use some of the levelling up funding in this grant to improve the Civic Centre car park, to possibly make it 2 levels? And he was told no by the deputy leader, with no sort of indication as to where the extra parking spaces are going to come from. With Bethany Square also looking to be redeveloped, it's as if we're going to use the money the government is giving us to develop our theatre, but we're going to get rid of any sort of viable parking near it. You know, the trouble I find, I know it's only a review and you're only looking to negotiate with a private company, but that private company could treble the price of parking, sublet to another parking management company that could charge people the earth if they don't get the correct ticket, shut at 5 o'clock, and then hand the keys back to us in 5 years if it doesn't make them any money, and we'll still have perhaps more money we'll have to spend to bring the building up to spec. I just think this is very short-sighted from the council, given that the government is giving us money to develop the Princess Royal Theatre. Thanks.
Thanks, Rob. Dave, do you want to respond to those points?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councillor Wood, for your questions and your concerns, which I fully understand, obviously. Just to explain that obviously the proposal hasn't come from officers in this regard. It came as a result of an approach by Signal Capital to the authority and to the Chief Executive, and we were, Estates Department and Ian were asked to look at the option, because it's an option at the moment, isn't it? We've known for some time that the building needs a major refurbishment, and capital is also becoming a significant pressure within the authority, with the significant backlog of works in both property and highways, as well as matched funding for the council's regeneration aspirations. In terms of the Luff project, I don't know the absolute detail on that, but it's very prescriptive, is my understanding, and that it's only made available for the building and not supporting infrastructure around the site. Then turning to the other part of the discussions, obviously my estates colleagues will be discussing a lease. They were looking for a long-term lease of 25 years on the basis that they would need it over a significant period of time, such that they could invest in the fabric of the building and bring it to a better standard. And they've been undertaking some detailed costings around that investment program. But the model that they are proposing to us is that they see there's a benefit in them taking control of the multi-storey car park to increase footfall in the town centre. But their business model is on the basis that with they're considering making that car park free of charge to users, and that if they get increased footfall, that the business model is that they increase the rental cost to each unit holder that operates within the shopping centre itself. So it's a different model to the way we think of how we operate a car park in the county borough. So that's their approach. They have got plans as well, which I don't think are in the public domain, but the users within the facilities would mean that they would like to keep the car parks open much later at night. And they've also indicated that for the operation of the civic centre and staff that would park there, they would still make that available on the arrangements that we currently have. And that theatre users would also be able to use that facility because they'd be keeping it open probably until at least 11 or 11:30 at night. But my colleagues now need to actually get into the detailed nitty-gritty of that, that arrangement. They would need to agree terms around the investment, the length of the lease, the operational hours, the parking arrangements for staff and for users of the theatre as well. So hopefully I think I may have covered all of the questions there, but again, it'll come back to members for a decision as to whether you wish to pursue that avenue or whether you prefer to retain the ownership of it, but being cognizant of the requirement to put some capital investment into that, or my colleagues being able to secure grants from elsewhere to support the renewal of the building fabric there. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'll call Councillor Wood back to respond and then on.
Yes, just briefly. I mean, you know, thanks for the comprehensive response there, Dave. But I mean, to me, this sounds like, you know, they're going to make it free for everybody, going to have it open longer, going to repair the multi-storey car park at no cost. And, you know, whereas we have failed to make a profit where we are charging. I mean, you know, my alarm bells would be ringing now, to be honest, if a company came and said that we are going to do all those things. You know, officers' time is very valuable and costly. And, you know, I don't think we should enter into this negotiation. What we should do is take money from the capital programme to improve the car park there. And with the extra footfall from the Civic Centre, it should be cost neutral. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Rob. I'll move on to Councillor Andrew Dacey next. Andrew.
All right, thank you, Sean. I disagree with Rob, to be honest. It's in my ward. When I first got elected, I spoke with the manager of the shopping centre, and one of the first things he suggested was that they take over the running of the multi-storey car park because they weren't happy with the services getting and the state it's getting into. At the cost it's going to cost us. I think obviously we got to go into discussions. Discussions have got to be favourable to Neath for Talbot, obviously. But I just think it'd be a more positive step. They can run it because they're running their businesses on the back of that car park. So they can do it better than what we can do it because they know the needs of the timings and things more than what we do. So I disagree with Rob. I think we should definitely look into this negotiations, and obviously the discussions have got to be favourable towards what we require.
Thank you, Andrew. Dave, do you want to respond to any of those points?
Just to sum up on those, perhaps 2 points. What I would say is that the Signal Capital operate car parks across the country and in Scotland. They obviously got a business model that's tried and tested. They will be going into it with their eyes open, and I don't think they're going to commit to something that they are going to be held over with having to upgrade the building as part of that lease agreement if they didn't think it was a serious proposition. But that needs to come out in the detailed discussions with my estate's colleagues, really, and we'd need to bring back the absolute detail around that for members in making any determination on the matter.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other indications from members on Port Talbot? Councillor Hurley.
Thanks, Chair. Again, for Councillor Wood, after what Mr Griffiths has said regarding their business model, it would be counterproductive for them to increase charges to drive people away from the businesses they're trying to support. So I have got faith in that they know what they're doing, in they want to increase footfall, which will benefit the whole of the town, not just the town centre. Regarding the conditions that you're worried about, the future maintenance, I'm sure the estates team are well experienced in putting conditions in leases where we can control that the work that they promise to do will be done. So I'm confident in that as well. The other thing is that we've got to obviously consider the rationalisation of our assets and the future maintenance of it. So we know that we need to save money somewhere. And if someone is offering to take responsibility of those assets and improve them and possibly improve the service that it might give residents, then we've seriously got to consider and fully look at those plans. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. I'm just going to make a couple of brief points myself. And I think, you know, when we discussed this in pre-briefing, the two things I noted down was assurances around the opening hours into the evening and as Councillor Hurley said, and others, that capital investment. I think we'd need to have a really tight agreement to ensure that that does actually happen, because I think Rob's point and concern is right, and we don't want the car park handed back to us with a big maintenance backlog, and I think that is a worry, isn't it? So I think if the report that does come back, if cabinet members are minded to continue with the negotiations, you know, I think committee members would probably want to see that detail and that assurance, I suppose, over those operational matters. Councillor, did you want to just come back briefly, and then I see the leader wants to speak, and I'll call the leader in then.
Yes, very briefly. And I mean, if the cabinet believe that the private sector is the way to go with car parking, I'll just point them to the car park at the cinema down the beach. Thanks.
Thanks, Rob. There's one other point actually I was going to add a moment ago, was just in terms of some of the assurance to come back in a future report. I think some analysis over the impact on our income in our other car parks would be very helpful as part of that discussion, of course, because if the intention is to lower the fees in the multi-storey, which I'm sure lots of the public would welcome, there's going to be a consequential impact on the income in our other car parks in the Port Talbot Town Centre area, isn't it? So I think that just be something from my point of view as a scrutiny chair, I think should be wrapped up in the report. I know we haven't got a crystal ball, but I think we should try and anticipate some of that movement of footfall if we could. Dave, do you want to just come in briefly before I call the leader in? Or Ian?
We have highlighted that as a risk factor in the report, but in my experience, obviously I've been in parking for 26 years now. People would park as close as they can. People aren't likely to walk from Station Road car park up to the shopping centre and back in the rain or whatever, carrying heavy goods, when for the sake of saving £1 or £2, most people just won't do it. We see that in Pontardawe. People want to park. They're not interested in parking in the bypass car park, even though it's right next to the shops. It's very hardly used at all, and people just want to park on the main road where the shops are. I think, you know, from experience, that would carry over. People would say, all right, I can park up here right next to the shopping centre, go to Argos, pick up my goods, come back to my car. Or do I want to pick up my goods and carry them all the way down to Bethany or Station because I can save £2? They'll just, people just won't do it. Like you said, we haven't got a crystal ball. It'd be very hard to give you data on what we're going to lose. We could give you data on what we actually take in the other car parks. It would be very difficult to work out who's not going to park there anymore. It'd be very difficult. And the other thing is, a lot of the businesses on Station Road, we sell a lot of season tickets to those businesses, and because they want to park by the businesses they work in. So obviously they would continue to work there. They wouldn't have any interest in parking in the multi-storey. You know, they'd still want to park in the bottom car parks. Plus, Station Road is like an overflow for the car park, the railway station. Even though we've got a car park in the railway station, a lot of people park in Station Road car park to catch the train. So they're not going to go and park in the multi just because it's free to walk down to the railway station. I can't envisage. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'll call the leader in to respond if you wish.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Just very briefly from me, listening to some of the comments, and I think it's open. We need to be open, transparent. I agree with some of the points you raised. It'll have to be done properly. But I just want members to be aware, and I'm sure they are, is that the Tata Steel impact, that we'll have lots of jobs there, and the concerns to the economy, not just in the shopping centre, but the wider communities across Port Talbot. I mean, the company of the shopping centre are the owners. That's what we're talking about. it's in their interest to make sure, and those of you who shop in the shopping centre will see quite a number of empty units, and things are not getting any easier. So they want to attract new businesses in for the reasons that are in the report, and it can only be at the benefit of Talbot and the businesses and the traders, etc. But critically is that that we do it right with the all members, not just this scrutiny committee, but all members of council, and the reports that David and others are trying to enter into a negotiation would be for the benefit of Neath Talbot, the Princess Royal Theatre, and everything that's pertaining with us as an authority. So I'm just saying, and I know officers will, but everything will be transparent. You can speak to them as well in your own right, as you do, Chair, on a regular basis, so that you have the information that you need to make your decisions and to give the input into what you feel is right or wrong, for everybody to understand the consequences of what is done or not done going forward. Because the last thing I'll say, we know we're going into a budget consultation currently, and every scrutiny committee, because I try to sit on as many as I can, there's challenges and savings that have to be made, and there's costs to the authority that we try to mitigate as well. So these reports are a start of a conversation. That's all it's for, to enter into a conversation and then bring that conversation outcomes back to members. So I think it's an important thing that you support it at this stage, Rob. To be honest, I think that it's a way forward. To shut the door at this stage wouldn't be prudent, in my opinion. But that's all I wanted to say. Thanks, Sean.
Okay, thank you, Leader. I can see Councillor Hurley wants to come in again briefly, if that's okay, Councillor Hurley.
Apologies for coming in after Leader as well. It's only for Councillor Wood, that's all. You mentioned the seafront car park, whether you could supply scrutiny and the Cabinet with the issues experienced down there, or whether officers might give us some feedback so we can do, a full consideration of how private car parks may be impacted then. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Maybe Councillor Wood might be able to give a brief run.
Yeah, Chair, as I've been named by two of the Cabinet members were there, and for the Leader there, I'd just say it's like selling the family silver. And for Councillor Hurley on the Cabinet there, I can provide him with evidence of attending magistrates' courts on behalf of my residents, with documents inches thick, whereby the parking company has sent a team of solicitors down from Manchester in order to prosecute a lady who was 3 minutes over the allotted parking time in the car park. If he wants to contact me, I can email him all that detail. I can put him in touch with the resident. There continues to be residents prosecuted by that car park, and I just wouldn't want this council being associated with companies like that. But if Councillor Hurley wants them to, then it's up to him.
Okay, thanks. I can see Dave wants to come back and respond on those points. Dave.
That's all I wanted to add, really, Chair, that the critical part of this is what's in the lease agreement. We have to be fully transparent on that, and if it doesn't meet members or doesn't satisfy members' concerns, then we can deal with that at a future point. And then as it's such a decision, it may be that we actually ask the Signal Capital as a company to come into the chamber here and present their business model on how they would operate and how that would look. If they're keen to take responsibility for the building, then you can look them in the whites of the eyes and ask them those questions directly before determining a decision around it. If that helps members, I'm sure that they could come and answer any questions, and quite rightly so as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on now just to discuss some of the other proposals in the report, because I can't see any other indications from members on this particular item. So the next proposals are the two potential future disposals, which we're just going to sort of potentially consider. The first one was Bethany Square car park in Port Talbot. We have discussed some of that in relation to the multi-stories. I don't know if any members had any particular specific questions on that at this point in time. I can't see any at the moment. So I'll move on to the bypass car park in Pontardawe. Now, I know there were some questions from members on this one. And I think, Bob, did you have a question on the bypass car park?
Thank you, Chair. It's not so much a question as an overriding observation with all the car park spaces in Neath Talbot and linking it and having connection with all the other projects. We're talking about Viva Talbot, we're talking about the Pontardawe Arts Centre, we're talking about, as an authority, I would hope, trying to regenerate our town centres so that just that when all those aspects of policies and reports are discussed, that there's a joined up conversation, that we're not giving the perception to the public that we're doing one thing and pulling another thing away. So we're putting in a better stuff in Pontardawe Arts Centre, but saying we'll take the parking away from it. So it contraries what we're trying to do. So it's not really a question, but an observation, I think. You know, hopefully, and I'm sure that the officers and the council will do this, have a good overview of everything we're doing all the time to make sure that there's a joined up conversation going on between it all.
Thanks, Bob. Dave, do you want to respond on that? I think
yes.
I think there was a note forwarded, particularly on Pontardawe.
No, that's fine. And the points are very valid, Chair. I don't know Pontardawe as well as I do Neath and Port Talbot car parks. So I will perhaps revert to Ian on this point. But quite rightly, we shouldn't just dispose of the car park. We need to be mindful of the other investments and improvements that we're making in the town centre, and particularly the arts centre at present, and we don't know how that's going to impact on the Pontardawe car park. But again, we wouldn't dispose of that until such time that a developer came forward, and then only if members were satisfied that there wasn't a demand for that car park. So again, it's something for the future. We'll need to monitor it. We'd obviously have to do detailed surveys on the disposal of any of the car parks across the borough. What we do know is the bypass car park I think it's making a loss as well. But that's again another concern, but it's not the biggest of concerns in that respect, because Pontardawe is a small town centre, and we must make sure that it is sustainable, and we don't want to do something that's going to have a negative impact on our own arts centres and facilities there. I don't know if you want to add anything, Ian.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Chair. I did note in the report that we hope that the regeneration of the Arts Centre will bring in additional visitors. So obviously when this report was originally looked at, that wasn't a factor. So we've gone back and changed it. And I think I agree. At the moment, we're running at a loss. There's nobody parking in there. If the Arts Centre does what it should do, which I think it will, then the occupational surveys might show that no, we need to keep that car park. There's nothing. We're not asking for a decision in this report. It's just we're saying there's something we need to consider for the future.
Okay, thank you. I think that leads us. I'll just take another point before I bring you in, Wyndham, if that's okay. I think it leads us into the discussion around data, which we had in the pre-brief as well. And I think Councillor Cathy James has a question on that in particular, because there's some data presented in the report around occupancy, and this is featuring in sort of a lot of the discussions really, because it's a key part of it, isn't it, is understanding the car park occupancy. So Cathy, do you want to just come in with your question on that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, on the Pontardawe car park, I think sort of obviously, anecdotally, the only time I ever use the bypass car park is when I'm going to the arts centre, and the only time I ever see more than a couple of cars in there is in the evening when there are events on at the arts centre, and that's particularly difficult to measure because obviously it's free at that time, which is probably why people are using it. So I'm aware that's no use to the council from an income point of view, but it does show demand. And I wonder if it was encouraging to hear you talking about survey work. I mean, the obvious thing to do is to use Pontardawe Arts Centre's mailing list to ask their customers where they tend to park when they come to Ponty. I think that would be a fairly cheap and cheerful way of establishing some trends in terms of where people park. But I think more broadly, I know I have asked this question before. We've got income numbers for the car parks. We don't have ticket numbers. I seem to remember there are issues with collecting that data. Maybe it has to be taken directly from the machines or something. But ultimately, when we are looking at car park capacity, we need better data and we need more granular data. It's not good enough just knowing the average occupancy on a couple of days. We need to know about those days in the year when actually we're running very, very close to capacity, and we need to make sure that we can meet that. So I would like to know, like, some reassurance that that some work is going to be done to improve the data on which we are basing these decisions. Thanks.
Thanks, Cathy. I'll bring in Ian on this point.
Thank you, Councillor. I agree with you. In an ideal world, we'd have occupancy counters in all our bays, in all our car parks, which we haven't got. They were looked at for the new Neath multi. The cost was prohibitive. I totally agree about Pontardawe. We would undertake detailed surveys, and they wouldn't just be, we'd have to do them 3-4 times a day over 7 days a week, you know, to capture when there are shows on and when there are not shows on. Give you an example of why it's very difficult to get true data. Just take Neath multi-story as an example. All the people who go to the machine and pay, or pay by phone, we got that data. We know how many people pay, but that's not occupancy, because all the staff that park in there, members park in there, doesn't capture those car usage. We got the leisure centre. None of the leisure centre users pay because of a deal that was done with Celtic Leisure. So you got all the people parking into a leisure centre. So they might look a lot of cars there, but the figures from income and how many tickets we sold are nothing like what's on the ground. So unless we actually do detailed surveys or put in physical people in it to count, that's the, you know, which we can do at a cost, but that's the only way we're going to get a true, accurate picture of usage. We can't base it on how many tickets we sell. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. And Cathy, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, if I could come back in briefly. You know, we have parking wardens who go round. I know we don't have many of them anymore. Do they keep account of how many cars are parked? Because presumably they also check the cars that are parked with permits as well.
Ian?
No, they don't count the cars as they go around. They just look for offending vehicles. You know, it is something we could ask them to do if needed. You know, on a car park by car park basis, we wanted that data. Obviously, especially for car parks we look into dispose of, so we get a clearer picture. But, you know, a lot of this support is, you know, Neath multi. We're not proposing to do anything with Neath multi anyway. So, you know, if people are parking in there, it's never been at capacity. I haven't seen it at capacity since it's been built. It looks busy. It's busier than it's ever been. That's because more people staff have come back to work in the Civic than when they used to be working at home. We got the leisure centre is quite popular, but those people, again, as I said, are not paying. So while the car park looks full, The amount of cars in there does not match the income. The fair, I put in my report. So the food festival is busy. The fair is busy. When there's a cricket match on, and I know we got rugby league coming shortly to the Knoll, which will bring up the figures. But that's the only time our income goes up, really, when there's events on. Okay.
Kathy, did you have anything further to add?
Yeah, just coming back again on the, I'm trying to come up with ways that we can get a better handle on the occupancy. So if we've got, sorry, I work in statistics, it's my job, I've got a bee in my bonnet about counting things. If we've got, so the warden is going around checking on offenders, presumably if there's somebody without a ticket in their window, it's then checked to see if they've got a permit. So when he's finished his round, he will have presumably a number of the number of permits that are there. And if we can also count the number of cars that are parked there, that gives you a baseline figure for the approximate percentage of cars which are on permit and the ones which aren't. So perhaps that could be used along with other things to give a better idea of occupancy. So if we know the value of the tickets sold and we've got a rough idea that, okay, on top of that, maybe another 40% are permit parked, that would give us a number. It's just a thought.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. And I've been reflecting on this particular point as well since the pre-brief, and what sparked the discussion in pre-brief in particular was actually Neath multi-story, because I've been visiting that a lot more recently, and it is actually full in the week a lot of the time, and it really is. Amount of times I have to park on the green floor right at the top, and I've got the last 1 or 2 spaces in the middle of the week, in the middle of the day. The leisure centre has driven a lot of footfall into that car park, particularly when we've got a lot of staff in the office in Neath as well. I think it does depend on how many people are working in the office on a particular day, but it did give us a little bit of a maybe mismatch from the data that was in the report to our experience as members. And I do wonder, just on occupancy data, I think it is something we need to look at gathering in a more robust way. Just generally, I think it'd be very helpful for us to understand that. But one of the things I was thinking about is whether we can use some of the tech that our highway teams use to count vehicles, because most of our car parks have got one entrance in and out, so we could just count the vehicles in and out using loops. We can put we put those temporary installations on the highway. I'm just wondering if we could do that in those car parks, even on a periodic basis, to gather some robust data. It might be useful in Pontardawe, for example, on the bypass, and then you haven't got to staff somebody being there at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the evening for a show. I don't know whether officers have any reflections on that sort of thing.
No, you're absolutely right. We could. It's the cost involved in doing the resource of taking the parking enforcement officer out to count each bay and floor plate, in terms of they'll only look at the car with the car in a bay. They're not looking at the empty bays. So that is a resource issue. We have had the network management survey team do surveys for us, but it is costly. I think we probably need to look at employing a specialist firm to put counters in on the access and egress, but we'll need to have some dialogue with them on the costs over that and what data that will actually provide us in terms of occupancy. There must be some data analysis and calculations that they can do to evidence occupancy, albeit notionally. They might not be able to tell you floor by floor unless they put monitors on every level. So we need to get into that discussion and what the costs are. The problem we've got is the parking budget hasn't got any money at the moment, and we're trying to manage our in-house spend and obviously trying to balance the budget going forward. So every bit of money that we spend on that puts additional pressure on the financial position. And then lastly, Chair, it's just come back to me now what I couldn't remember earlier. So at Milland Road, An additional cost of us leasing that car park is that we're responsible for repairs. And last spring, our structural engineers identified a defect there in the retaining structure, and I had to go to the capital programme to obtain £75,000 to do a repair on that wall in order that we did over the summer to enable the fair to continue to come in September. So that was the other hidden costs that we tend to have to deal with in year as well. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Wyndham, you wanted to come in before this bit of discussion. Do you still have a point to make?
Thank you, Chair. The discussion has moved on since most of what I was going to say has been covered, but I was just going to say, and to assure the members, that we've had discussions about the bypass car park, and we will as the officers have told you, we will be conducting in-depth studies when the theatre opens again. That's what I'm going to say. So be assured that this will be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Tim Bowen.
On the counting of vehicles going in, sometimes we put the wire across the roads to count vehicles going over.
Referring to, yeah.
Is that something we could look at? On the cheaper side of it?
I will ask. I'm not sure whether the data counters do the same thing. I presume they do, but I look into that.
Yeah, if we're going to start forking money out for people to go and count and whatever, it's going to, it's going to be budgets out of the parking and so forth. It's going to be a negative, whatever, isn't it?
Just to come back, I don't think we do that ourselves anyway. I think we probably employ specialists to put that kit out onto the network for us, Mike. I'm not sure.
Okay, I can see Simon Brennan's indicating online. Do you want to just come in, Simon?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, in terms of the accounting, it's broadly similar to some of the work that we did previously in terms of understanding desk occupancy within buildings. What you can use is if you want to do it accurately, you use the LoRaWAN systems with the Internet of Things. So you'll have little sensors on each parking space effectively that as they're used and not used, that triggers and generates your data. The problem with that, as Dave mentioned, is that it's not cheap. Probably for a multi-story car park, I guess, and I don't know because I've never done it, but I guess you might be looking somewhere near a six-figure sum to put that sort of bit in place. It does give you great information, but it does come at a cost. And that's the same sort of issue that we wrestle with in desk occupancy. Otherwise, you end up doing what sort of Dave was talking about there, where you send people around to look at things periodically and you get an indication perhaps of what the situation is, but you don't get fully accurate data. And I think that's probably the same as you would have on the loops going in and out, where you'd have broadly you'd have numbers of cars in the car park, but it might not be terribly accurate. So it can be done. It just needs an investment at the outset.
Thanks, Simon. I'm going to bring in Councillor Hurley briefly, and then we're going to move to the recommendations so we can go on to our next item because we've got a lot to get through today.
Apologies, as repeating what Simon Brennan said, I think we have got a part of the city deal which covers the interconnectivity and the Internet of Things, so I'll speak to the officer, see what the possibilities are. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good suggestion there. Okay, so members, I'm going to take us now, if there's no other questions. I think we've covered everything that was indicated in pre-brief in terms of all the topic areas, to the recommendations. Now, there's a number of separate recommendations, and they are listed on page 17 to 18 of the agenda pack. So I'm going to take them in turn, and we'll work our way through them. I may just suggest some sort of brief amendments just to capture some of the requests from members in the meeting around some of the data and assurances and that sort of thing, but we'll work our way through those now. So firstly, recommendation 1, which is the approve the instigation of disposal procedures for Rosser Street car park in Neath. Could I have a proposer and a seconder for that recommendation, please?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Proposed by Councillor Tim Bowen, thank you. And a seconder?
Happy to second, Chair.
And seconded by Councillor Bob Wolford, thank you. So, members, are there any abstentions?
I see no abstentions, Chair.
Okay, members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, I'll take it that this recommendation is approved.
I see no indications to the contrary, Chair. Therefore, that recommendation has been approved.
Okay, thank you. So the next one is recommendation 2, which is in relation to Milland Road car park to enter negotiations with Arch Company Limited to clarify the cost of a new lease or withdrawing from the arrangement, with a further report presented to Cabinet for decision. I was potentially going to suggest that we ask for some more data on this one in terms of car park utilisation, but I think we've perhaps been assured that the overall car parking capacity is probably not going to change as a result of this proposal by any meaningful amount. But so I think we'll just ask for a proposal and a second on the recommendation as it is. So can I ask for a proposal there?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Councillor Tim Bowen, and a second there for that, please.
Happy to second it, Chair.
Councillor Bob Wolford, thank you again. Are there any abstentions, members?
I see no abstentions, Chair.
Okay, members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, I'll take it this recommendation is approved.
I see no indications to the contrary, Chair. Therefore, that recommendation has been approved.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll now move on to recommendation 3, and this is to continue negotiations and agree terms with Signal Capital to lease the Talbot multi-storey car park and to bring a further report back to Cabinet for final decision. And I think in relation to this particular one, I think it may be worth us suggesting an amendment just to add to it that should include details on the capital investment proposals from the Signal Capital, the opening hours, and data on the impact of other car parks in Port Talbot Town Centre. I don't know if I can get some briefer wording for that.
Yeah, so what you could do, Chair, is if you want to have a proposal and a second for the recommendation, and then what we can do then is pause, get some wording together, and then because that recommendation will be out in front of everyone, we can then look at the amendment and someone can propose that and we can vote on that, and then if that passes, take the full recommendation, including the amendment. So
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So can I have a proposal then for the recommendation?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Okay, so yeah, can I have a seconder, please?
Yes, I'll second it, Chair.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I understand from the conversations just had that an amendment is about to be proposed. So we'll just pause for a second to get that wording together, and then I can put that into the chat, and we can obviously say it out verbally for everyone, and then we can look at whether that needs to be proposed and seconded as well then. Hi, members and officers as well. So I'm just about to put the word in the chat. So if I pass back to the chair now, so that we can proceed.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Could I get a if members could just see that in the chat, that just captures the essence of some of the discussion there. Hopefully, I'm just wondering if I could get a proposer for that particular word in the chat. Do you want to just read it out, Tom? Because I can't get it on my screen. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So the proposed wording, so this would be in addition to the recommendation itself, is to include capital investment plans, proposed opening hours, and impact on Port Talbot Town Centre car parks retained by the council.
I have a proposer for that. If anyone's willing.
I'm happy to propose.
Thank you, Tim. And a seconder?
Yeah, I'll second it then, Chair.
Thanks again, Bob. Okay, in relation to that amendment, are there any abstentions from members?
I see no abstentions, Chair.
Okay. Do any, if members have not indicated the contrary, then I'll take it that the amendment is approved. Okay, I've got one indication to the contrary in the chamber.
I'm against.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I see no other indications against, Chair. Therefore, that amendment is approved. Now that that amendment is approved, that forms part of the substantive recommendation. So what we'll now do is need to vote on it. So basically the recommendation including this wording that you've approved now.
Okay, so can I have a proposal for the amended substantive recommendation, please?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Tim Bowen.
Second, Chair.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, members, are there any abstentions?
I see no abstentions, Chair.
Okay, members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, I'll take it this is approved.
I can see Councillor Rob Wood is voting against. I can't see any other votes against. Therefore, this recommendation, including the amendment, has been approved.
Okay, thank you. Fantastic. Members, one more item on this. I do think we should put forward an additional recommendation in relation to the discussion we've had on data and occupancy. And Tom, I think you've got that. I forgot that written down for me.
Yeah, so this effectively would be recommendation 6, which would be the Scrutiny Committee's own recommendation. I will just put that in the chat now, and then I'll read it out in a second. Bear with me. There we go. I can hear the pings. That should be in the chat now. So this would be the Scrutiny Committee's own recommendation, which is that officers explore options to gather occupancy data to be reported back to the Scrutiny Committee.
Okay, could I have a proposer for that recommendation, please?
Yeah, I'm happy to propose.
Councillor Williams, thank you. And a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rob Wood in the chamber, thank you. Okay, members, are there any abstentions on that recommendation?
I see no abstentions, Chair.
Okay, members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, I'll take it that recommendation is approved.
I see no indications to the contrary, Chair. Therefore, that recommendation has been approved.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so we'll now move on to agenda item 3B. Oh, apologies. Sorry, Tom. Oh, did we miss those?
Yes,
Apologies, sorry. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, we've had so much that we've been looking at today. Recommendation 4, the Bethany Square car park be retained for now and its disposal be reconsidered should future development opportunities arise as part of the town centre regeneration, with further reports brought back to the Cabinet for decision in future. Could I have a proposer for that recommendation, please?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Proposed by Councillor Tim Bowen.
And second, Chair.
Seconded by Councillor Bob Wilford. Thank you. Are there any abstentions on this one, members?
I see no abstentions, Chair.
Okay, members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, I'll take it this recommendation is approved.
I see no indications to the contrary, Chair. Therefore, this recommendation has been approved.
Fantastic. Okay, so we'll now move on to recommendation 5. That is that the bypass car park in Pontardawe also be retained for now and be reconsidered as and when development opportunities come to fruition, with further reports brought back to Cabinet for decision in future. Again, I think we've received some assurances around some of the data that's going to be gathered and reported back on that one. So can I have a proposal on that recommendation, please?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you, Tim. And a second.
And a second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bob Wilford. Are there any abstentions, please?
I see no abstentions, Chair.
Okay, members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, then I'll take it this recommendation is approved.
I can see no indications to the contrary, therefore that recommendation has been approved.
Thank you. Okay, now it's time to move on. So we will go to item 3B now, which is the report on improving recycling performance and budget delivery. That's on pages 29 to 143 of our report. There are, as expected, a number of questions from members on this one. Before I go to those questions, do officers want to introduce this report? Mike?
Thank you, Chair. Just say I know Scrutiny have had a lot of involvement in waste generally. You've got a lot of information in front of you, and I know it's one of your favourite subjects. So I'm happy to get straight into the questions. And just to know, I've got a few members of the team available online as well to assist with any detail that the members are interested in.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so as I explained to members, after our pre-briefing, we're going to group the questions again by theme, just to try and cover off all the topic areas that are subject to separate recommendations. And on that note, we're going to start with the discussion around the 3 weekly refuse collections and the associated absorbent hygiene collections proposal. So my first indication from pre-briefing on that item is Councillor Rob Wood. Rob.
Yes, I mean, this is like Groundhog Day. It seems to be one thing, the 3 weekly collection, that nobody wants, except the officers, but it keeps reappearing, despite assurances from the committee and the leader that we would not be moving to 3 weekly collections. I totally disagree that this is here, and that I agree with the public. We asked with a consultation whether they wanted this, and it was a resounding no. And, I know officers will say, we've got to hit the 70% target. Well, other authorities are doing a 2 weekly waste collection and hitting the 70% target. So, I think it's where we need to look, not putting it to 3 weekly collections again. I just find this bizarre because the Cabinet and the leadership, they have the authority to quash this once and for all. They can say today, we're not going to 3 weekly collections because we were accused of lying in recent elections and scaremongering. Well, here it is again. So let's quash this today and let's say we're not going to 3 weekly collections. End of. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Rob. I'm just going to check whether any other members have any particular questions on 3 weekly collections proposals before I go to responses, because I've got a feeling we may have some questions on a similar theme. So Councillor Carol Clement-Williams. Carol, do you want to come in?
Can you hear me today, Chair?
Yeah, can hear you, no problem.
Hooray. I've had the job getting in again. Yeah, this is going to be very, very unpopular if it does go through.
Sorry. I do apologise, Councillor Williams. Have you got a headset on at the moment, or are you just using the mic and the computer's volume?
I am, because when my headset's been in, it's been dropping in and out.
Right, I see. We are experiencing some distortion like we did in the last meeting, unfortunately. So if you could bear with us, we can still hear you, but it is quite distorted. So we may need to clarify some of the things you say at some point. So I do apologise in advance. But if I let you continue, but I just wanted to make you aware of that issue.
Okay, I'll try again.
Sorry, Councillor Williams, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm just plugging my earphones in.
All right. Sorry, thank you.
Can you hear me now, Chair?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Oh, I've lost you now. I can't see you, but if you're still there, I agree with Rob. I recycle. Sure that if anybody came up to see my recycling bags on any Tuesday, I recycle everything that I possibly can. But my other waste bin is always full after 2 weeks. I'm not going to be able to cope myself, so I think it's going to be very unpopular, and I really don't think that that it'll work. But that's my opinion. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Carol. I'm going to call in Councillor Andrew Dacey next. Andrew.
Thank you, Sean. I understand the financial constraints and obviously the recycling targets, but it would be vastly unpopular, especially in Aberafan, which is obviously an old urban area. We're trying to make improvements there slowly, and I think we get in somewhere slowly. But if we went to 3 weeks, it would throw another spanner into the works, and people would go against it. So,
sorry, Chair, is it just me that can't hear Councillor Dacey?
Yeah, he's a little quieter than everyone else, Carol.
You know, I'll take my headphones off.
Okay, thanks, Carol.
Anyway, to sum up, speak a bit louder. I wouldn't be keen on a 3 weeks. I'd like to stick to 2 weeks for as long as possible, especially for areas such as Aberafan, Talbot, Ferry, and similar areas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Right, I did see an indication from, I got 2 indications from Cabinet members. I don't know who wants to come in first.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'll be quicker than the leader.
Yeah, thank you, Scott.
I appreciate to date some of the comments that's been made, you know, around the very controversial issue amongst residents, and I agree with Councillor Clement Williams that it's going to be an unpopular choice as well. I want to steer away from getting into any predetermination matters, because I'm very mindful that I'll be party to this decision-making process in due course. But I'm quite comfortable by putting on record and suggesting that I've got concerns with these proposals before us today as well. I have taken into account of the survey that's been done, you know, across the county borough, and I've read them and taken great interest in a lot of the comments that's come back from it. However, like I alluded to a couple of days ago, nothing changes in this regard as well. Whereby, you know, this is it's now part of budget, 5% departmental budget savings that needs to be met. We're looking at equivalent of 739,000 in this relation. So again, I wouldn't say you as a scrutiny or us as a cabinet, but we collectively, if this goes off the table, we need to be mindful, you know, that an alternative potentially has got to fill this gap of 739,000. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Scott, and I do appreciate you being candid there in your sort of perhaps initial views on this proposal as part of the discussion. I think members do appreciate that from our cabinet members. You mentioned budget, and I think that does lead us into actually one of the questions from pre-briefing from, I think Councillor Cathy James was trying to clarify some of the mechanics of the budget savings. So I don't know if you want to ask that question, Cathy. Oh, sorry, Leader, do you want to just come in briefly?
Yeah. Just to clear up any confusion, Councillor Wood made reference to myself regards to misinformation. I don't want to get into a political debate here, but yes, misinformation was given out during elections. On those leaflets that I can supply you with was that we are going to 3 weekly bin collections. That's what the public were told. Now, I just wanted to clear up what Scott has said, cabinet member. He summed it up correctly. Officers were tasked, as you all will be aware, with finding an extra 5%, hence the recommendation. This recommendation will save the £730,000 going towards the budget balancing of financial circumstances. That is their job. I said it earlier, in scrutiny committees right across all the three, you will find the savings being proposed by officers. So I want to clarify again, Rob, these are officers' recommendations. They are not decisions being made by this cabinet or myself as leader. So I hope that hits home this time. I've said it to you, I don't know how many times, and I don't know how many more times I'm going to have to say it to you.
I think you made your point then.
Yeah, I know I made my point, but he keeps on coming back, and I wasn't in the last meeting when he made it again. So I'd be very careful when you make reference to myself going forward, because it's not helpful. So I just wanted to say, like the cabinet member, I did say 3 weekly bin collections are unpopular. We've listened to the consultation, and I got to be careful I don't predetermine either until a decision is made. But we don't know where we are with the budgets currently. We know there's been a budget by Westminster government. All this information now will have to be taken into account, and we can see what we can do with some of the recommendations from officers. So officers will continue to do their work, quite rightly. That's what they're there to do. And then we will see what, if any, can be taken out of the programme that they have given us to balance the budget in a different way. And the last thing, Chair, I know you're patient. I mean, council tax will always play a part in balancing any budget. And therefore, potentially, if there wasn't going to be a 3 weekly bin collection, that could quite easily, depending on the budget, fall on a council taxpayer. So I just wanted to make that quite clear for the decisions that we all have to make. And we do take your views and your recommendations from the scrutiny very seriously. And in fact, we've implemented some of them over the period that we have been as an administration. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Leader. And again, so appreciate you responding there. Obviously, we don't really want to get into the weeds of political discussion too much in today's meeting. The only point of clarity I'll add, which I've added from this point in the chair on a number of occasions now, I think you're correct to say that we've got proposals in front of us today, as we did in our budget meeting, that are suggestions from officers, and I think members understand that. It is worth clarifying that the adopted waste strategy of the Cabinet does include the potential to go to 3 weekly collections. And I think we do need to make that point clear. Although that wasn't a decision to implement it, the consideration of it was part of a Cabinet report endorsed by the Cabinet of this Council as a policy position. And I've made that point clear in the chair on a number of occasions, because there's a distinction between those points. I'm going to call in Councillor Cathy James now in relation to the budgetary item, and then we'll move on. I'm calling Councillor Cathy James, and we can come back into Cabinet members later on in the discussion. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
The question is largely around the green waste charges, though it does have implications for all of the budget calculations for this item. So we're looking at, I think it's approximately £220,000 savings from moving to 3 weekly bin collections, and then a £489,000 income from the green waste collections. Now, all of these changes are not kicking in until the 1st of April. So 1st of October. So it will only be 6 months of the financial year that any of this applies for. We haven't got detail for the cost breakdown, for the savings breakdown for the 3 weekly bin collection. But for the green waste charges, that 489,000, it's predicated on 45% of households taking up the green waste collection. If we're going to make that saving over 6 months, we're expecting an average income of £19 per household using it, which means almost all of them signing up to the £40 a year scheme. I don't think that's remotely realistic. In addition, I think introducing these charges in October, I don't think there are many households that are going to bother, because there's very little green waste collection in that second half of the year. So I think the vast majority will just leave it until the following spring. So I am very concerned about how realistic this £489,000 income is for the 25-26 financial year. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy. I'm going to go to Mike now just to respond because we've got quite a few things we've covered just on 3 weekly collections.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I say it's quite an emotive subject, and I'll try not to get involved in any of the statements that are made, but just to try and keep on the factual information. 3 weekly collections work. They've been demonstrated to work in terms of driving up performance. The majority of Wales is already doing it. And I can tell you that the emerging collection blueprint that Welsh Government are producing is going to be saying that frequency should not be more than should not be lower than 3 and 4 weekly. So 3 and 4 weekly should be the collection period. That's what the new blueprint is going to say from what I've seen. It's been said that everyone was against it. Yes, we've had a lot of consultation responses. We've had a healthy response. That represents 5% of households as set out in the report. So perhaps 5% of households don't want it. There's a reference to other councils hitting the 70% and not having 3 weekly. That tends to be where there is fortnightly collection, but with black sack collection with a restriction to 1 bag a week. That effectively, if you look at whether people have got bins or bags or whatever, it works out to one bag a week is where the best performance is coming from. And on the budget savings, I mean, just to bring in a bit of the previous scrutiny meeting that we had, when we had to put the savings together to assist finance when they come to do the budget book, we were required to log the savings against the budget code that we were required to give a budget code. Now, rightly or wrongly, I put the savings from the 3 weekly against the 5% savings requirement in order to give finance an indication what budget it would come out of. I could have equally, though, put it against income from green waste, but this is a tricky report for us to write, in as much as officers don't know how members are going to vote. So we could have a vote for both key items, 3 week elections and green waste. We could have a vote for neither of the key items, or we could have a vote for one or the other. And so we tried to write the report covering all of that. And that's where it is. So the savings are showing on the report from the 3 weekly, but it could as easily be from the green waste, and we'd have to just clarify that once we know what way the votes go.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to try and keep track where we are on our discussion. Rob, I'm going to let you come in really briefly. And then
very briefly, Chair,
off this green waste discussion, and then I'm going to bring the cabinet member in after that.
Just on the 3 weekly, and just briefly, we've had the officer allude to Welsh Government are looking at this, and we've had the cabinet mentioning council. The decision for 3 weekly collection, if it comes, that will be a decision for cabinet. Yes. So cabinet will make that decision. So if 3 weekly does come in, it'll be a cabinet decision. I just wanted that clarified. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I think I think people understand that in terms of the decision-making process. I'm just going to continue on the green waste questions that we had from pre-brief, and I think Councillor Laura Williams has a few questions on the green waste proposal specifically. Do you want to come in, Laura?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got 2 questions. I will start with the first one separately, though. It states there's no charge for the green bags. However, does this cover the cost of lost or stolen bags throughout the year? For example, a household pays the £26 stated for their 2 bags and they're lost within that year, so within 6 months. Do they then have to pay to replace those bags? If so, can you confirm what the cost would be?
Just so, I mean, obviously at the moment the bags have value because the council sells them. So this is why, people, because they have value, there is a potential for people to want to acquire other people's bags. If we have a subscription system and the bags come with a subscription, they lose their value in as much as if people acquire the bags, they will not have them collected, because the in-cab system will tell the cab exactly who's on the scheme and who isn't on the scheme. And this works well in other areas. And so there'll be no, that reason for people taking bags at the moment, because the value will disappear. If bags do go, they will be able to have a replacement.
Okay.
Yeah,
Laura?
coming back. So to confirm, there would be no replacement charge if they did happen to lose their bags.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Also, would it be communicated out? How would you communicate it out to the residents that they have to have the subscription service?
In the papers, there is a significant section on communications. We recognise there will need to be, and that's one of the reasons for the run-in, to make sure everything is properly communicated to residents.
Thank you. Then my second question is, I know the report states that we would be set the pricing structure at a midpoint compared to other councils. However, we haven't been provided with the details of what other councils do charge. Is there any reason for us not having this information?
Just, I'm not sure. Check with colleagues. Was it provided previously in the in previous scrutiny meetings when we did the preparing the information on the consultation process?
So, Mike, just to confirm Mike's question there, no, that detail was not provided, but we do have it available if and we can share it if necessary or if requested.
Yeah, that'd be great if we could see that information, please.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any further questions, Laura?
No, at this time, thank you.
Okay, my next indication is from Councillor Bob Wolford. Bob?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was coming in there because I had questions around what Laura was talking about. I wanted to ask, the live feed system is a new system. Have we got costs for how much that's going to be to put it into the vehicles? Because it's obviously an alternative system. And have we got confidence that the operation of it, I know you've said you've looked at other authorities, but the operation by those workers will be accurate? Because if it's in the cab, I presume it's going to be operated by the driver, who will communicate to the people picking up where they should or shouldn't pick up. I'm aware now that quite a few mistakes are made by our operators when they're going around, which is why we've got a missed collection policy as it is, and also things like the food bag system. I've often put my little yellow tags out to get food bags and don't get them because the operators aren't attentive. So I just wanted to make sure that we're looking at the impact on the workforce, what these kind of proposals will do, and they will be able to operate this equipment efficiently so that we're not missing these waste pickups.
Thank you, Bob. Mike?
Yeah, just I know Councillor Bob's one of the newer members, and we've been at this for quite a long time. In terms of the live feed system and the strategy, yes, we've got costings, and it was all the money was provided for under the waste strategy. So that money is in the reserve waiting, and it's all linking up with the work my colleagues doing, Dave Griffiths, on the new fleet system and the tracker system, and the live feed system is coming in on the back of that, and we've made sure it all integrates together. We've been to other councils to see it working, and it's all working well. We've seen things like impacts on miscollections, which are great. So we look forward to that. So we know the system works. We've seen it work. We've got the funding in place. I'm sure we could dig out the paperwork for that for you, Councillor. The other point was,
I think it was in terms of the logistics of the crew using the system and how they're going to attend to the properties that are subscribed and not subscribed. Was that the next bit of your question, Bob?
Yeah, that was the basis of the question. Thank you for that answer, Mike. I didn't realise that this system was already kind of paid for, which is why I wanted to, perhaps that could be put in the report so that we know that money is there. And also it was around the impact on the workforce. which would have led me into my next part. If we do go to black bag collections and take away the wheelie bin collections,
can we hold that for a moment, because I've got questions
Oh,
on
yeah.
black bag stuff later, if that's all right, just so we don't get completely into the mixed up. Mike, do you want to just respond on the crew impact for the green waste?
Yeah, sure. I say we've been to other councils, seen it working. Obviously, there'd be training, and it works well. I'm sure that some of the staff may may want to be reevaluated along the way, probably, but we'll see.
Okay, thank you. Are you okay with that, Bob, on green waste?
Yeah, thanks. As long as it's looked at, I think that's the important thing, is that we make sure that we get these things in place before we consider implementing a system that may not work. That was my concern.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. I think that was clear. Great. Councillor Rob Wood in the chamber on green waste, yeah.
Yes, two brief points. A lot has been covered. The first one, and it's a sort of a rural question. This one is: do you think that any sort of charging for the green waste could lead to dumping, especially of cut grass in the winter, in the fields, which provides a hazard for horses, especially? It can cause a lot of injury to horses, the dumping of cut grass. And the second point I got is, if the service isn't taken up and people turn to burning their waste or whatever, put it into black bags, will this reduce the overall tonnage towards our target of 70%, putting us at risk then of future fines? Thanks.
Yeah, a couple of things. I think both of those items are recognised in the report. In terms of the green waste, if we do green waste charges on its own, yes, it can experience elsewhere is it can depress the amount of green waste that we collect, because people do things like home composting, for example. With the transition, any change, also looking at elsewhere, there can be a short-term issue, whether it's go to 3 weekly or green waste charges with some extra fly tipping. But we've seen in the experience that, one, we've got resources to deal with that and enforcement to deal with that, but also clearly elsewhere, the situation soon reverts to normal as people get used to the change. And that's the message. And I think that's stated in the report, that's the experience that we found consulting and looking at other councils, that whilst there can be a short-term issue, that things, that it is short-lived while people get used to the change.
Just come back briefly on that. I mean, that hasn't really answered either question in a way. I can't see that charging is going to increase or even stabilise. You will always have the people, not through their own fault or anything else, that can't afford to pay for this green, charge introduction, and that will cut tonnage down and possibly increase the amount of black bin, non-recyclable waste we have, as it could end up in there. And fly tipping teams, I mean, how many? They're not going to be able to identify where the cut grass is from. With black bag waste, it's different. With fly tipping, you can find evidence. But if people are just dumping a grass in a nearby field where a horse is kept, that is going to provide a significant danger to that horse. And I just think that, that needs to be noted. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Rob. I think your point's noted there by Mike, unless you have a response, right? I'm going to call in Councillor Cathy James next, and then I've got 2 cabinet members waiting to speak as well after that. Cathy?
Thanks, Chair. I'm just following up on my earlier question about how realistic the saving and income targets are for this year, bearing in mind we're only talking about 6 months. I appreciate there are difficulties in terms of allocating things to budget lines, but just the broad question that we are looking at a significant income from green waste, and I'm questioning how realistic that is just based on October to March. Thanks.
Thank you, Cathy. Mike?
One thing, I can't speak for the Director of Finance, but the council does build in contingencies, for example, in the budget. And I know that where there are savings agreed that will give full, when there's a part year impact compared to a full year impact, then I know that it can be considered appropriate to use a contingency whilst we get over that part year, impact. Of course, if a decision is taken, the information communications will kick in, and we'll be really driving that forward, that there are going to be changes, and hopefully that will lead people to start making changes and to recycle more, to move to accommodate the any change in their collections. And as we know, when diversion goes up, we save money on the disposal, because it goes to recycling, where we either get income or there's a lower cost to get rid of the materials. So very difficult to work out the exact timing of all the savings.
Okay, thank you. Kathy, are you happy with that response?
Yeah, so basically we're saying that the savings actually for the 25-26 financial year are unlikely to be the 700 odd thousand. That's likely to kick in future years, and for this year it's some contingency funding might be needed to fill in the shortfall. Okay, thanks.
Okay, right, so I've got two cabinet members waiting to speak. I've got Councillor Scott Jones, and then I've got Alan Llewellyn, Deputy Leader, on Teams. Scott?
Yep, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points of clarity, really, because this seems to be going round and round. In relation to the waste strategy, going back somewhat 18 months ago, the Cabinet did instigate the waste strategy, and contained as Measure 11 is reference to proposals, and I've got to absolutely specifically say officers' proposals on to consult with the wider public on a 3-weekly collection. Now, Councillor Wood has made reference in terms of statements that's been made by the
Point of order, Chair, we've moved on. The discussion has moved on to the next item. Sorry.
I asked to come in earlier on, a lot earlier on, and I was supposed to come in earlier on following your statement.
I'll let you wrap up your point, Scott, but we do need to round off the political comments now.
Thank you. So the point I was making, really, when the statement is being made that this is on and off the table, excuse the pun, but what the statement Councillor would have said is a load of rubbish, because it hasn't been on and off the table.
Right, okay. I think we leave it there now.
It's the same process.
Okay. Alan Llewellyn, Deputy Leader.
Yes, thank you for bringing me in, Chair. And I think there have been many relevant points and questions during the course of the meeting. It did start off with a very sweeping statement by Councillor Wood, but I want to refer back to that now. What I do want to say is that this is a very professional report that's in front of us, which I think reflects that waste disposal and recycling is a very, very complex situation, far more than probably most of us understand, including myself. Now, of course, we have to give consideration to these issues. The Welsh Government, the Welsh Labour Government, has given us onerous recycling targets, which we're working very hard to meet, and working very hard to engage our residents in that we all play our part in it. And of course, we do have a huge budget challenge in front of us. However, we will also need to consider the public response to our consultation. And of course, we will be considering the discussion in scrutiny today and any constructive recommendations that are made. Before, as a Cabinet, we have to reach a very careful decision on the options in front of us. So I wanted to say that as a sort of summary this morning. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate that. And yeah, I think, again, members appreciate the number of Cabinet members present today listening to the discussion, which is really important. I'm going to move to the next topic area now, and this one did generate a fair bit of discussion in the pre-brief as well. This is around the additional supplementary measures for removal of wheelie bins for presenting waste, and the removal of free black bags for residents on black bag collections. there's a number of questions on this particular item again. My first question is again, Councillor Rob Wood. So, Rob.
Thanks, Chair. Again, this is we're going back to the 1970s, isn't it? To switch from wheelie bins, which were brought in because of all the issues we had with black bags. I think this is a very retrograde step. And if we go down the route of not supplying the black bags, what you'll find is what happened in those days, being a resident of Old Aberafon, as I was, and living in an end house where the rubbish used to get put, is the bin men will be coming out collecting them. They'll be lifting the black bags, which will be so full, the bottoms will go out of them because there'll be no quality standard on the black bags if people are allowed to purchase their own. Some will buy good quality ones, some perhaps won't. Some will buy larger literages, some won't. If we switch from wheelie bins to black bags, I think that will be an absolutely terrible backward step. Thanks.
Thanks, Rob. I'm going to bring in a few other questions because they're quite similar in their theme before I ask for a response. So my next set of questions are from Councillor Laura Williams. Laura.
Thank you, Chair. Has any diligence been done on the impact of bag-only collections on the workforce, particularly in terms of manual handling injuries? Further to this, have any conversations on the proposals been had with our trade union colleagues? If so, have they raised any concerns of the well-being of the workforce?
Thank you, Laura. Do you want to just come back on those before you?
Yeah. Well, the proposal is whether to consult. So there has been no consultation, and there would need to be consultation. And if there is a public consultation, they will consult with the workforce and the trade union colleagues and others as part of that process. Of course, a lot of councils have never had wheeled bins, and I know that we've seen it as a retrograde step, but a lot of them have never had them. It's really only here before you because very recently such a saving strategy has been enacted elsewhere, and if members wanted to consider it, given that the financial outlook is, the position was the financial outlook wasn't looking any better, then now would be the time, because a lot of our refuse vehicles are due for renewal now. And so if we wanted to consider it, we'd have to consider it now, or we'd be buying new vehicles and it would be 7, 8, 9 years down the road before the sort of opportunity to do it if members were inclined to consider it. So really it's just pointing out that fact to members and saying this has happened elsewhere. It is a saving strategy. It hasn't been consulted on. Do you want to consult on it?
Okay, thank you. Do any members want to respond to those points? Okay, Kathy, did you have a question on this item? I'm not sure if we've crossed over from 3 weekly.
Yeah, no, I did initially have a question, but on rereading, no, I don't have a question. It's been answered. It's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Were there any other questions from members on this particular item that I don't?
Sean, thanks for that. My question was answered just now. Cheers.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, we've covered a similar topic, haven't we? Do you mind popping your mic off, Bob? Thank you. Yeah, I think in pre-brief, this was particularly interesting because it was a newer proposal, I suppose. And I think maybe the sense I got from members in pre-brief that this maybe felt like an additional step too far because of the myriad of impacts. And I think officers have maybe acknowledged in the report that we'd need to have additional cleansing crew to manage the impact of this particular proposal. And I think just from my point of view as a member, I'm particularly concerned about losing the wheelie bins in an area that's lucky enough to have them, because I know some parts of the county don't. I can see I've got an indication from Carol Clement Williams on Teams, and then we'll move on to the next item. Carol?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right, I can't always hear you, I'm afraid. So just for me to throw it in there, I don't know if I'm going to get the answer, but I know where I live. I live on a side of a mountain in Bagan. Most of my residents do with a wildlife. And when we did have black bins, there was rubbish everywhere.
Sorry,
just
sorry to interject there, Councillor Williams. We really can't hear anything you're saying at the moment, I'm afraid. Maybe it would be worth putting your question in the chat, and possibly the chair could come back to it at the end of the discussions, if that would be better.
Yeah, I think that's a sensible way forward. Thanks. Okay, I can't see any other questions on this item at the moment, but we can come back to Councillor Clement Williams' question once that's in the chat. So I'll move on to the next subject matter, which was the two policy items. So the missed collections policy. So we have a few indications again from pre-briefing on this one. I'll start with Councillor Cathy James. I think perhaps there's a question.
Sorry, my computer was slow. I think it wasn't a question as such. It was more a comment on the recommendation.
Okay.
That we come back. On one of them, it says that you will come back for a further report.
Review.
Yeah, for a review, and I recommended that we had a review of this as well. So yes, I hadn't even made a note that I'd said that. But,
no worries.
Yeah, so when we come to the recommendations, I think we could add that to as an amendment.
Okay, thank you. I'll just go to Councillor Tim Bowen, who I think wanted to talk about the communication to the public.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's whether we go ahead with this or whether we don't. Residents are still getting wrong information when they go through to the switchboard. And I think we need to put something in place that everybody works off, because we are getting more and more phone calls from residents now trying to sort the miscollections out and so forth. So I think we need to put something in place that everybody works off.
Thanks, Tim. And I think just to sort of add to that, I think it was in relation to this particular policy, it sort of states that members of the public are told that crews will return. But our experience as members is that members of the public come to us because they're told crews will not return. So there's a sort of a disconnect between what the policy says the contact centre is telling members of the public and what our experience is. And I think that's Tim's point, really, is to make sure that gets tightened up. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that, Mike, but
no, just add, I know the customer system is being completely revamped at the moment, and colleagues I know on the screen are working very closely to make sure that it is absolutely clear information that's going out to residents. And just to say, I think the previous question to that was, there's a report. We've said we'll bring another report back on miscollections once the live feed system is. And I think from the notes I saw from the pre-briefing, the question was, it doesn't say that on the side waste. If members would like an update on the side waste, I'm happy to bring that as part of coming back to you on missed bins. It's fine.
Yeah, and thanks for that, Mike. And yeah, that was the note really from the next policy, the side waste one, was that members were quite happy in relation to the missed collection policy that there's going to be a 6-month review, so we can see how that's working. And yeah, members I think just wanted the comfort, given the level of changes to the side waste policy and the exemptions, that a review paper would just be really useful opportunity to see how those measures are working. Okay. Right, I've just had Carol's question pop in. Yes, she's just made a point in relation to going from wheelie bins to black sacks, that there's a lot of wildlife in the area and bags being ripped to shreds. Rubbish area because the rubbish everywhere because the bags are being torn, and it might have an impact on staff who need to clean up the mess after those rounds. So that's just the point made by Carol, which I think it sort of echoes some of the points and concerns raised by other members. And actually, I think officers have acknowledged it as an impact in the report as well, haven't they? On that point, I don't know if you have anything to say, Mike.
Other than a consultee will be my colleague next to me, who's responsible for neighbourhood services, and I'm sure you want to have input into any consultation.
Okay, fantastic. Right, so do you have a question on sideways?
I just want to put something on record.
Yes, Tim.
Thank you, Chair. It's to do with the side waste, and I take it that these are the stickers on the black bags that we're talking about. At the moment, I've got a family. My daughter was made homeless. They've had to move back in with me. I've got 5 adults, 3 children living in my family. At the moment, I put every fortnight 4 recycling bags out, 1 bin, 3 purple nappy bags, 1 food bin, and sometimes 2 black bags. This is happening to a lot of families at the moment, and I don't think we should be penalised for having extra people in and this system taken away from us, because it's inevitable at the moment that sometimes we got to put the extra black bags out, and I think it's going to be so unfair to a lot of families that are suffering this way at the moment. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Mike, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I think, you know, as you say, you're putting out the purple bags for nappies and things. So you're still going to get the exemption by the sounds of it, because you're doing everything that the council's asking you to contribute to for recycling. So you've still got extra non-recyclable material. So you'd be entitled to a continued exemption for that. And that's covered under the policy.
Okay. Right. So, members, before I go to the recommendations, are there any other questions the members have? I can see Laura waving at me there. Laura.
Yeah, they're just clarifying questions around the communication of any changes. So the first one would be, can we just outline what is meant by media blasts? Do these include paid for advertising on social media? And then the other statement I just want to make is I'm fully supportive of printed materials needed to communicate these large-scale changes. However, I do note from the list we've been provided, there's no costings relating to any of this. So is there any chance that we could see some costings that are related to those communications? Thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
Yeah, I'll just call on my colleagues who perhaps can give you a bit more detail on media blasts. It's not my
I'm not
area of expertise.
Who's going to pick this one up? Is it Nicola? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that'll be me. Thank you, Chair. The idea of the media blast, Councillor Williams, is that we put it out repeatedly to try and get the message as far spread as possible. So we're trying to cover with the communications plan people who only use social media, people who will only who don't use social media or any sort of internet, so that they've got the paper copies as well. We haven't costed any of it because it will depend on what sort of service profile we end up with. And how many properties we need to communicate the changes to. Thank you, Chair.
I just add to that, Chair, that the cost of the media information is very small in comparison to the numbers we're talking about in terms of the potential savings and free weekly collection on Greenway, and certainly within any sort of error of margin within the cost estimation process. Because you know, we don't know exactly. We've looked at all the comparisons elsewhere, and we can draw comparisons for elsewhere with what the impact will be in Neath, Talbot, but we don't know exactly, unless we did it, what the extra diversion will be, exactly how many people will sign up for the agreement, and it's all within the tolerance, as I see it, in the budget estimation.
Are you happy with that? Do you want to come back?
Yeah, can I just come back on one point Nicola made? So would it mean that every single household will see sight of a paper copy, or would there be specific demographic targeted, just based off what Nicola said about who would get what? Thank you.
I think I know the answer to that, Chair, but I'll just call my colleagues who know the detail.
Nicola, do you want to respond to that?
We would make sure every household, depending on what service changes are approved. So obviously, if it's a whole-scale service change to 3 weekly collections, then every household across the county borough would receive a paper copy, and obviously those that are on social media will see the information on there as well. So it would depend how many properties we are talking here and what service change we are making. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. We need to go to votes on some of the recommendations. Actually, some members need to leave soon. So I'm going to draw members' attention to the recommendations, which are listed on pages 49 to 50 of the agenda pack. So members will note the recommendations 1, 2 and 3 are straightforward approved recommendations. Recommendations 4 and 5 and 6 are A and B options. So members will need to propose option A, which is to implement, or option B, not to implement on those ones. So I'm going to go first to the first recommendation, which is to approve combining paper and card curbside collections and the introduction of small electrical items. Could I have a proposal and a seconder, please? As proposed by Councillor Rob Wood.
Chair.
And seconded by Councillor Tim Bowen. Thank you. Are there any abstentions, members?
I see no abstentions, Chair.
Okay, members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, I'll take it this recommendation is approved.
I see no indications to the contrary, Chair. Therefore, this recommendation has been approved.
Thank you. So the recommendation 2 is to approve the updated missed collections policy with a review after the implementation of the in-cab live feed system. Could I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Proposed by Councillor Bob Wilford.
Happy second.
And seconded by Councillor Tim Bowen. Thank you. Are there any abstentions, members?
I see no abstentions, Chair.
Members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, I'll take it this recommendation is approved.
There are no indications to the contrary, Chair. Therefore, this recommendation has been approved.
Okay, next we go to the revised no side waste policy, then Appendix D of this report. I'm going to propose a really brief amendment, but I need to propose in a seconder first. Could I have a proposer, please?
I'll propose him.
Bob Wilford, and seconded by Councillor Tim Bowen. Okay, I just suggest that we add to the recommendation on this one, which is to approve the revised no side waste policy set out in Appendix D of this report, with a review in 6 months, a review paper. Let me just check with the officer how perhaps best to word that.
I was thinking just bring it back with the report on the missed collections, or with the review on the at the same time as bringing that back, bring an update on side waste.
Yeah. 1 sec, Tom. How do you want to? Okay, members. Tom's just going to pop this in the chat now. I'll just read it out. So we'll just add to the end of that recommendation. So it will be approve the revised side waste policy as recommended in Appendix D of the report, with a review report to be included with the missed collection policy. Can I have a proposer for that?
I'll be proposed, Chair.
Proposed by Councillor Tim Bowen and a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Bob Wilford. Thank you. Are there any abstentions, members?
I see no abstentions, Chair.
Okay. Members, if you not indicate to the contrary, then I'll take it that this amendment is approved.
See no indications of the contrary, Chair. Therefore, this amendment has been approved.
Okay. I now need to propose and a seconder on the substantive amended recommendation. So can I have a proposal, please?
I'll be proposed, Chair.
Councillor Tim Bowen, and seconded?
Second, Chair.
Councillor Bob Wilford. Thank you very much. Members, are there any abstentions? No, I can't see any. So, members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, I'll take it this recommendation is approved.
There are no indications of the contrary, Chair. Therefore, this has been approved with the amendment.
Thank you. Okay, so we now move on to the first of our A and B recommendations. So this is recommendation 4, which has 2 parts. So it's either A, to determine whether to implement 3 refuse collections on the base identified in the report, and approve expanding the current pilot to fully roll out weekly curbside absorbent hygiene collections, or B, not to implement a proposal to move to 3 weekly refuse collections. So I need to ask for a proposer. I can see one indication in the chamber from Councillor Rob Wood.
I propose option B.
Thank you, Rob. Do I have a seconder for that?
Yeah, I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Laura Williams. Okay. So I now need to ask members if there are any abstentions on this vote.
I see no abstentions, Chair.
Okay, so members, if you do not indicate to the contrary, then I will assume that you're in favour of option B.
See no indications of the contrary, Chair.
Okay, then option B is carried. Thank you. So we'll now move on to the next recommendation, which is recommendation 5. And again, this is an A and B recommendation. I'm not going to read all of this one out. It's actually quite a long option. Again, option A is to implement. Option B is not to implement. This is in relation to green waste charges, and that recommendation, members, is on page 50 of the report for you to read. So I need a proposer for an option there. Okay, I have an indication from Councillor Rob Wood.
I propose option B, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder for option B?
Yeah, I'll second, Chair. Thank you.
Seconded by Councillor Laura Williams. Thank you. Members, are there any abstentions on this item?
I see none, Chair.
Okay. Members, if not indicate to the contrary, then I'll take it that option B is approved. Okay, I have one indication to the contrary in the chamber. Are there any others?
I can see no other indications to the contrary, Chair. Therefore, that would have been approved.
Thank you. Okay, so we now move on to recommendation 6, and this is in relation to the supplementary measures, which is the discontinuation of the providing of black sacks and the use of wheelie bins. Again, this is option A and option B. A is to include the supplementary measures in the forthcoming budget consultation, and B is not to include the supplementary measures in the forthcoming budget consultation. Could I have a proposer for an option, please? Councillor Rob Wood.
Chair, I propose option B.
Thank you, Rob. Is there a seconder for that?
Yeah, I'll second, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Members, are there any abstentions?
I see no abstentions, Chair.
Okay. Members, if you've not indicated to the contrary, I'll take it this recommendation is approved.
I can see no indications to the contrary, Chair. Therefore, this recommendation has been approved.
Okay, thank you very much. That's fantastic. So we have one item left. I'm just going to check whether anybody needs a quick comfort break before we move on to that. Is everyone okay to continue, or do we want to take 5 minutes? I think we're okay to continue. Perhaps this one should hopefully be a little bit quicker. I should never say that as chair, really, should I? So we'll move on now to item 3C, which is the pilot of access approach to formal parks and gardens on pages 145 to 167. I've got some questions from members, but before I go to those, James, do you have anything to add to the report?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, a couple of things just before obviously we take any questions. One point just of note is within the financial impacts section of the report, there's a cost associated with the installation of bollards to stop vehicle access if we to leave the pedestrian gates open. That's because we've got some pedestrian and vehicle joint access. That cost is incorrect. It isn't £1,000, it's £2,000, just over. I think it's 2,076. So that's just a point of note. The other thing, which isn't included in the report, maybe which should have been, is just to point out that whilst we've referenced that we'll be undertaking consultation with the Community Safety Project Board during the trial period to identify if there's any crime and disorder impacts associated with the pilot, if it's given the support. Obviously, between the support being given, if it is, and the pilot start in December, there'll be a lot of consultation done with our sort of stakeholders, with the parks and gardens as well. So, for example, friends groups. If you take, I noticed that Councillor Rice earlier obviously mentioned about Jersey Park. So the Friends of Jersey Park would be one of them within that 2 to 3 week period before it starts.
Okay, thank you for the additional information and clarity there, James. That's appreciated. So I'm going to go to questions now from the pre-briefing, and the first question is from Councillor Rob Wood.
Yes, just briefly observation on this. I mean, I can see some pros and cons with this, but, in alluding to that, we may have to engage partners around sex worker traffic and drug abuse. Are we sort of minded to think that possibly these problems could be an issue in the future, given that if we leave the parks open, we cut in, as we know, the lighting. A lot of these parks without additional lighting would be very dark, plenty of benches. They'd be the sort of places that people could possibly congregate late at night with some serious mental health issues. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Rob. I'm just having a quick look what other questions I had. Did you want to just respond to that, James? Thanks.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor. As it's stated in the report, we've sort of had like an official trial period just down to resource due to sickness. We've got one individual who undertakes this task on a daily basis. Obviously, we arrange overtime where we can, but sometimes it's not always forthcoming. Through the work we've done with the police and the local PCSOs, there hasn't been any information around things like sex work coming back. I think the focus has been more around antisocial behaviour. But obviously, we've got a duty as a council and as officers under crime and disorder and the risk associated with that. So that's why we've identified it. I've worked closely with the community safety team to identify potential issues that could arise. They're not things that we believe will, but that's the whole point of the pilot as well. So within that regard, I think it's maybe important to note as well, because I know the dates aren't in there. I've since spoke to Eleanor Wellington with the community safety team. The project, the Community Safety Project Board, will be being held, I believe, is on the 5th of December, so 4 days after the start of the trial. My intention is to go there to present, obviously, to the other external agencies what the pilot is, how long it's asking for, what the changes are in terms of the access arrangements. And then there's another meeting of the project board as well, which is very handy on the 11th of March, so towards the end of the trial. So my intention is to go back on the 11th of March and ask for that feedback, identify if there are any impacts associated with the changes, and also put a bit of onus as well on the other external agencies. Are there any measures that they could bring forward to mitigate if there are impacts? And then obviously we can bring that back in a further report for you to consider at a later date.
Thanks for that, James.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. My question was around the 1,000 now 2,000 cost of the installation of the bollards. Do you have any indication of how many bollards this funding will cover, and how many could possibly be installed at each location? So, for example, in Talbot, we currently have 3 gates that are left open that could actually accommodate vehicle access. Would all 3 have a bollard? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, there's 12 in total. I think they're priced about £173 each. Obviously, my staff would actually go and install them, so that's why the cost is quite low. But yeah, so 12 across the parks. I haven't got the exact details now within each. The team have got that, so if you want those figures, we can get them to you.
Yeah, I think it'd be great for all colleagues to have that. That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Tim Bowen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. All these parks, James, even though the gates are locked, I take it they've got other accesses into it where pedestrians and so forth can get into them. As you know, I spent a lot of time up the Knoll. The Knoll gates haven't been shut now for maybe 5, 6, 7 years. Although we get a bit of problems up there, we don't get major problems up there. So I can't see why we need to keep all these gates shut in the night, where it's, you know, if people can get into them, they're going to get into them either way. And that's just my
James, thanks, Councillor. Yeah, obviously just to confirm, the Knoll isn't included within this proposal. It is something I've managed previously. It's very, very porous, and there was no way to obviously to stop people getting out of hours. There are ways to stop people getting into the parks that are included within this report out of hours, which is obviously locking them. There are serious difficulties when it comes to our staff who actually undertake this role, associated with obviously lone working being one, because of the budgets we got available means that that's what we have to do. And there's been numerous occasions where they haven't actually locked them because there's people still in there. There may be groups of youths or whatever it is. So a lot of the time, even though our policy has been to lock parks, there's been a lot of them which haven't been locked overnight. And I've had individual conversations with local members over the past couple of years as well, since being the neighbourhood services manager, where that has been raised as a concern, but there's very limited action we can do to resolve that.
Just quickly, but at one stage, and always closed every night at 8 o'clock, going back many years ago. The gates were closed, but it was taking that decision to leave them open. And what I'm saying is, it hasn't caused major problems up there. There's not a lot of vandalism activity or paedophiles or whatever. We haven't come across that in this place. So leaving gates open, I don't think is going to have an impact on what's going on.
Thanks, Tim. Councillor Bob Wilford.
Thanks, Sean. Just to kind of give a little overview with the discussion about having a locked or an unlocked area. So my experience of being a police officer and police in the area, if you actually lock an area, it's more likely that they will break in. It's more attractive to people that want to use antisocial behaviour, because people using drugs and people using antisocial behaviour want to be in an area where they can't be found. So they will cut through a fence, climb a fence. I mean, an example of this was during lockdown in Pontardawe with the 3G area, which was run by Celtic Leisure. Because it wasn't open, there were people coming from all over Swansea and cutting holes in the fence and going through to use it. I reported it many times before I became a councillor, but it couldn't be stopped. They would come with wire cutters and they'd cut a hole in the fence. So I think leaving gates open isn't going to increase any antisocial behaviour or any misuse. The only thing aside to that, I would say, is making sure that the large gates are bollarded, because one of the biggest problems at the moment in this area are illegal scramblers, illegal motorbikes, and we've had several instances on parks, sports fields, golf courses where places are being wrecked just because these people are destructive and will get in if they can.
Thanks, Bob. Some good insight there. Do you want to respond to that, Jim?
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll go back and check with obviously the officers within my team that the bollards that we have recommended to be put in installed as part of this trial do actually stop things like scramblers from entering the parks as well. I'm not sure if based on the cost associated with what we've been provided per bollard that will, but I'll have to double check that. It's whether it's something we do as part of the trial or it's something that maybe the trial will actually bring us back some more information as, yeah, it could actually be a problem. I suppose is for discussion, but I think it's certainly something that needs to be on the table.
Happy with that, Bob?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Yeah, good.
Fantastic. And just to follow on from Bob's point, really, and well, James will know, one of the local members with a park in my ward that hasn't been locked fully for some time, with at least one gate left open, and we do have some issues, and actually some of that has been to do with the fact that there are 3 lock gates and 1 open gate, so all of the activity congregates around 1 gate, and that has meant there's been some low-level disturbance, antisocial behaviour, just as a result of that in the evening. But I do subscribe to Bob's view that if you lock the parks, I mean, people can get in, they can climb the fence, they bend the bars. There's always a way in if you want to get in. And by encouraging legitimate use, people cutting through the park as a shortcut, walking the dog, then you're going to deter the antisocial behaviour. So I subscribe to that as a general view. The only thing I'd add, and we had this discussion in pre-briefing, is in an ideal world, what you'd then do is provide some lighting, particularly to the footpaths in the parks, because if you're leaving them open into the evening and encouraging people to use them, or in certain areas they're a shortcut, that might be something worth considering. But obviously in the wider context of the budget and other pressures, I know that's a bit tricky, but it is something I think we might want to look at, because if there are funding opportunities to put some low-level bollards or something, particularly in areas where there might be a well-used cut-through in a park, that would probably further deter the antisocial behaviour element, because actually a lot of times people are seeking out a dark, secluded, locked area to for whatever purpose, and that was sort of my reflection on this.
Thanks, Chair. I think one bit of comfort. I've spoken to the lighting manager this morning, because obviously we'd had this conversation in the past about the lighting associated with this pilot. The dimming and trimming sort of report on the trial that's going on, and if that came in, that wouldn't impact our parks. So the lighting that's already there wouldn't be impacted by that. But at present, we've got no recommendation as part of this report to install additional lighting. But it's something that we can certainly look in terms of options associated with funding opportunities for
that. Thank you. And I think it's there's different products around these days as well, isn't there, that perhaps can be less costly than full-on sort of street lighting proposals. I just want to check. Oh, I've got Councillor Gareth Rice, sorry, on Teams. Gareth, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair.
just a point of note, really, that whereas you wouldn't expect people to be in parks previously, and now with them open, there'd be people in there, or could be people in there, that while putting bollards there, we need to make sure we keep a means of emergency vehicle access into the parks.
Thanks, Gareth. James.
Yeah, obviously there's different types of bollards you can put in, and the ones that we'll be talking about will be dropped coffin bollards. So that we can obviously drop them down on the day. So there's limited. So we can work with our obviously the external agencies, the police, fire, and ambulance. I suppose the other thing is at the moment is if people are in there at present, there is no vehicle access now. But that's something we pick up as part of the trial. I pick up as part of the community safety partnership board as well.
Thank you. Is that okay, Gareth?
Yes, Smith. Just point notes on. Thank you.
Right. Are there any other questions from members before I move to the recommendations? Okay. Can't see any there. So, members, let me just find my page. The recommendation for this one is listed on page 156 of the agenda pack. The only other point, actually, I was going to raise, apologies, members, I forgot to ask my own question, was you mentioned, James, around engagement with other stakeholders. But one of the things I think would be very useful to do is to do some public engagement on this as well, if we are going to do it, to seek particularly views of perhaps people who live in nearby, but also people who may want to use the parks. And that was one of the things you've covered off staff, which is a great thing. So I think we do need to get the feedback from staff. But the public engagement element, I wonder what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think we have had a lot of conversation around this and consultation wider. But what we thought was, let's do the trial. Let's bring back some information, and maybe within the next report we bring back post the trial, if it is supported, is to go for consultation on it. And I don't know if maybe that's the best time for us to do that, rather than to go for consultation to do the pilot. At least we'd be given some information. And
I think perhaps what I'm saying is, rather than to consult on doing the pilot, it's if we go ahead with the pilot, that doing the pilot process, that we're open to feedback from the public during that process, I think is the point I'm making. Because there will be people that will notice it and have a view. So I just wonder if we could consider that. Do you think that's something we might be able to achieve?
Yeah, certainly. If it gets obviously endorsed, we've got a little bit of time between now and the start of the pilot, so we can we work with obviously the media team, and we put something out there to inform people what's going on, and also to ask for responses as well. And like I said, I work with Sylvia and the media team on that to see the best way to do it.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Thanks for that, James. Right, members, we'll go to the recommendation then on page 156, and we'll just perhaps add a brief line to it just to reflect that public engagement element. So can I have a proposal in a second for the recommendation as is at the moment, please?
Happy to
propose. I'll second it then, Tim. Cheers.
Okay, thanks. I've got pros and a second to there. And the amendment on this, again, we probably don't need to put it in the chat. I think we can just add to the end of the recommendation and include public engagement. So can I have a proposer for that as well, please?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Second it, Chair.
Seconded by Bob Wilford. Are there any abstentions on that?
See no abstentions, Chair.
Fantastic. Members, if you don't indicate to the contrary, I'll take it you support that amendment.
I see no indications of the contrary, Chair. Therefore, that amendment has been supported.
Okay. Can I now have a proposer and a seconder for the amended recommendation?
Propose, Chair.
Councillor Tim Bowen.
Second, Chair.
And Councillor Bob Wilford again. Are there any abstentions, members?
I see Councillor Gareth Rice has got his hand up.
Sorry, Gareth.
Yeah, I'll abstention, please, because I'm trustee of Jersey Park.
It's up to you, but I don't think it's a prejudicial interest if you're happy to
Okay, I'm happy.
continuing
I'm
the
happy
vote.
to continue. That's fine.
Thank you. Do you want to just lower your hand then? There we are. Okay. Members, if you've not indicated to the contrary, I'll take it this recommendation is approved.
See no indications to the contrary, Chair. Therefore, that amendment and recommendation is approved.
Fantastic. Okay, so we have no items on our scrutiny forward work programme for today's meeting, and no performance monitoring reports either. So the only other item is the forward work programme section on pages 169 to 188. I don't believe there are any changes. Do you have anything to report on?
No, there's been no changes since the meeting on Monday, Chair.
Okay, fantastic. We've had a lot of meetings this week. So, as usual, members, if you have any forward work programme suggestions, just please approach myself, Tim, or Tom to discuss those. So I have no other business for today, no urgent items either. So that ends today's meeting. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much for attending.